What we're going to do now is reflect the fact that we are a movement. We are from across the UK. And just there are 6 chapters who are going to give a bit of a thumbnail, 3-minute sketch about where things are up to with their particular chapters. My fantastic technical team have got this really brilliant thing up there with numbers on it that'll count down. So I am empowered to be rude and cut you off at the end. So be as concise as you feel you can. So first up, all the way from Cardiff, we've got Laura Drane.
Dwi'n dechrau siarad yn Gymraeg. Prynawn da, Laura Drane dwi. Dwi'n dysgu yn Cymraeg, ond dwi ddim yn siarad yn Gymraeg eto, and in English. I've lived in Wales for 4 years. I'm learning Welsh. I'm not fluent enough to deliver this in Welsh. I'm not sure the stage text will capture it in Welsh. But I wanted to honour the start to this by using the language that I do have. So I'm Laura Drane. I'm an independent creative producer. I co-founded the chapter in Cardiff with Yvonne Murphy from Oh My Days, and it's been running since 2014. We've been asked to share 3 things, and we're just going to be given like 30-second snapshots. So one key challenge. The key challenge I'd like you to take away that we're still working on is the fact that we are a capital city of a devolved nation. We have some of the same layers and complexities of politics and media that happen in London. We have a city deal which is being brokered between 10 local authorities and more. So it's an incredibly complex environment within which we work. One key achievement, I would say, is Cardiff Without Culture. You can see some of the images from the march, which we coordinated behind me. We mobilised with others, and that's a really key bit for me, to overturn the local authority's decision to cut a proportion of its arts and culture budget. And one of the many wonderful creative things we did was organise a march rather than do all the petitioning and things which we did as well. Another thing that we've done as What Next Cardiff is host a creative hustings for the Welsh Government Assembly elections, which attracted more than 200 people, which made it not just a first for the arts and culture to have a hustings, but also one of the first and biggest hustings events in Wales in the election campaign. And an upcoming action or future focus. So I'm going to have one that's very immediate, which is a tiny plug, and 2 or 3 which are longer term. So the tiny plug is that we're doing a public-facing survey, a 24-hour culture survey, which What Next West Midlands kindly trialled, and when Paul Keynes moved from Birmingham to Cardiff, we used the idea, and we're launching that this weekend with the hashtag This Is Culture. So we want people to fill that survey in and tell us what they do, what they see, what they make, what they play over that weekend, starting this Friday. And then longer term, I would say 3 things briefly. One is that we're engaging with ministers and officials over what might be one of the first cultural policy statements made by a Welsh Government minister, and also talking to our new Assembly Scrutiny Committee, which has culture as part of its remit. We're working with Welsh Government and the 10 local authorities around the meaning of culture within the city deal, particularly thinking about the metro, which will be the kind of tram infrastructure which is built. What's the point of being able to get from Caerphilly to Newport if it's just for work? What else does it need to be? And then in the long term, and particularly post the EU referendum results, I would say we're asking these big, hard questions about the sorts of country that Wales needs and wants to be in the next 5, 10, 15 or 20 years.
Now I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Lynch from Wandsworth.
So I'm also an independent creative producer and chair of the Arts Catalyst and Theatre Rights. And we set up What Next Wandsworth in July 2013, just after the last national conference. And I co-chair What Next with Artie Prashar from Spare Tyre Theatre. And we're both local residents. We meet monthly, and we have a rolling attendance of about 12 to 15, about 25 regular attendees, so it's quite small, but we have a mailing list of about 70, and individuals drop in and out. And it's a mixture of community, higher education, and arts organisations. One key achievement, we feel that we've influenced Battersea Power Station placemaking team to consult and work more with the local arts sector. And this has been manifested through their partnership with Battersea Arts Centre, who are working with them to develop the Village Hall, which is a new cultural and community centre on the site. And in 2 recent appointments of people from our sector, from the participatory arts sector. So Kate Scanlon, who some of you might know from her work in the hip-hop events, huge national hip-hop events, is heading up their events team, and Rashida Nalamoso is the village hall producer working closely with Battersea Arts Centre. Key challenge, well, an ongoing challenge, I think that we set ourselves right at the start, is to try and embed arts and culture in the thinking and decision-making of the local authority as part of their approach to delivering services. We've said to them, we're not coming to you to ask you for more money, but we want specifically, we're speaking to the directors of housing and health to say, how can the arts help them deliver the services more effectively? What do we have in common, and how could they make a more coherent offer with the resources that they have? So the key action or future focus is really to keep that conversation going. We want to influence their thinking outside of the box of leisure, arts, culture department. We have a really good arts team. They're now a mutual and they're great. They work very much to influence the developers, particularly not just Battersea Power Station, but the whole Nine Elms development. We've got 19 different developers in Wandsworth at the moment to try and influence to have a cultural strategy that's more than just tokenistic. But they find us very useful because of our independence, and we can have meetings and say some things that sometimes they can't, which is great. And in terms of the people who come to the meeting, they feel strongly that they do play a civic role in the community. And so our focus for action is to continue the conversation and to be as specific as we can strategically about what we think is needed.
Next from Sunderland, we have Dave Harper.
Whatever you like.
Sunday name, David. Dave.
Hi, like you said, my name's Dave Harper and I'm from the Sunderland chapter of What's Next. I run a venue, arts hub, I don't like using that word, but gets used a lot towards me. A place called Pop Rex. We provide affordable artist space. We are a mental health drop-in centre for young people. And these are all things that we've became over the 3 years we've been in existence. We're completely crowdfunded. We remain unfunded by any other major organisation. Probably talk to some of you later on, hopefully, about that. At Pop Rex, we house our What's Next chapter. I don't know how many of you people have actually been to the city of Sunderland, but it's a small conurbation just south of Scotland. It's a large place, often maligned by our beautiful cousins in Newcastle. Getting the amount of numbers of people in a room without hurting each other in Sunderland, we genuinely see as an achievement. I've been involved with so many drives under different names and banners that have instantly spluttered because people don't trust what that organisation represents and what it does, because there's been no tangible outcome. So I would say our key achievement is just the fact that this group is becoming to look sustainable. That might sound very base and like sort of like a very obvious thing to you, but in our city of Sunderland, that remains to be a very big deal. So that remains our key achievement. Our key challenge, we think, is the image of our city and how we project the positives around art and culture. And we feel to do that, it involves unearthing our very hidden strata of creatives. Pop Rex, the place that I run, has the ethos that it's the antidote to that, whereas we realise that people can be really put off very quickly by the bureaucracy and the hurdles that are put in front of them, and therefore their achievements and their creativity is never seen by people. So that is our main challenge, to make sure the people that are creative and the people that are positive and the people that are great about our city get the exposure and the support that they need, and that's really key to the What's Next team that are in Pop Rex at the moment. Actions for future. I think mainly converting the relationship that we have into something much more positive. There's very much a DIY ethic in Sunderland and very much in Tyne here as well. And it's the legitimatising of that which we think is going to be key in the future. We've been doing it for years, but without any ability to really shout about it. And that's what we hope to achieve with our What's Next.
Thank you, Dave. We're now going to go to Nottingham and hear from Cathy McArdle.
So we are What Next Nottingham. We've been around 18 months. We're made up of all the arts and cultural organisations in the city of Nottingham, large, small, professional, voluntary and participatory, as well as HE, FE and creative industries. Our key achievement is that I think we've created a more joined up, creative, networked cultural sector in the city, and we've mobilised cultural organisations in the city so that now we've secured funding for the development of a cultural framework in the city, which we will develop through conversations, which will be ready by March 2017. Our key challenge is leadership and value. How can culture be embedded across the city's activities if the city leaders don't understand or believe in the value of culture? And then how do we convince our leaders so it becomes policy, not personality driven? And then how do we make sure that culture is integral to the life and the story of the city? A linked challenge is diversity. Nottingham suffers from a lot of inequality and a lot of poverty. So how can everyone enjoy a wide range of cultural engagement at multiple levels in their schools, their homes, their neighbourhoods, their venues and the city? And we want to explore systemic approaches to that are not necessarily driven that are not part of the conventional thinking around diversity. So how do we diversify governance of our cultural organisations? How do we diversify the workforce? How do we diversify the people who make the decisions about what culture happens in the city? And our third challenge is how do we galvanise collective action? How do we build the involvement of the cultural organisations? How do we make them realise that together we are stronger, that together our voice is more powerful, and together that we can generate collective change? Our key action is to keep going, finish what we've started. So we've got to finish our cultural framework and have it ready by March 2017, and make sure that it reflects the whole diversity of voices and experiences in the city. We have to finish our Gulbenkian location study by the end of October. We're also collaborating on understanding the story of Nottingham with Marketing Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, so we need to contribute to that piece of work and the emerging story of place for Nottingham. We're launching our cultural education partnership, which we're calling the Cultural Education Challenge Nottingham, because there's a challenge back to the city to look at the cultural experience of its children and young people. And we want to shift the discourse, expand and extend our networks and our sphere of influence, increase the quality of the debate, build our collective action and our visibility, and place culture at the heart of the city's planning and growth.
Okay, and now to make sure we spread the love between Sunderland and Newcastle, we're going to hear from Newcastle Gateshead from Patricia Stead.
Just start by saying I live in Sunderland. Okay, so I moved to the North East about 10 years ago to work for the Arts Council, who I don't work for now. And one of the things that was really interesting about moving to the North East was that my colleagues would say, it's so brilliant up in the North East. People meet and talk all the time. And we did. We really did. Whether it was the Regional Development Agency or the Government Office or the Association of North East Councils or the Arts Council, there always seemed to be something happening that people would come to and talk and listen and hear, and some planning that we were all involved in. But of course, we're quite a few years on from that, and there is no RDA, there's no Government Office, ANEC's been mothballed, and the Arts Council is very, very much smaller than it was. And really, the only people that get talked to these days are the MPOs. So there's a whole community of people in the cultural sector in Newcastle and Gateshead, which is a big cultural sector, who are not involved in discussion, who don't get invited to meetings, who don't get Arts Council briefings sent to them by emails. We tried a few times to set up what next in the North East, and it just didn't happen because there were too many people and it was too big in terms of administration. In Newcastle, we had a Newcastle cultural partnership, and we managed to get a strategy together, but it quite quickly fell into the same people turning up once every 2 months with the same agenda items, and nothing ever seemed to move on and change. And then one day we had a meeting where more people than usual turned up for this one meeting. And collectively, everybody said, this is really dull. We don't get enough done. Let's just not do this anymore. So what we decided to do instead was have a party. So we produced a summer party invitation and we sent it out far and wide in Newcastle and Gateshead. And we invited everybody to come to a party, and you got a free drink if you had your invitation with you. And at that event, we then announced that we were going to set up a What Next. And that's what we did. We set What Next up a year past in September. In the December, we held a very large event in Newcastle, which 250 people attended. And the purpose of that was to ask the people who were the strategic movers and shakers in the North East where they thought culture fitted in the plans for devolution, for LEPs, for anything. We got talked at. We had a lot of talking at. And actually, what came out of that was nobody really had a plan. Nobody had an idea. That kind of fueled What Next to keep going. And of course, that was also the period when the corporate spending review was coming along. So we had quite a lot to discuss. So since then, because I know I've got to move on, we've been meeting every single week for just over a year. Every week we have an agenda. We have lots of people come to talk to us. Numbers have fallen. Some weeks I turn up and I sit there and think, nobody else is going to turn up. And then people wander in with their lunch. Sometimes it gets to 1 o'clock because we meet from 12:30 to 1:30. And I think, I'll never last to 1:30. Trying to get people to stop talking at 1:30 is always a challenge. So we're still going. We are described by one member of the Sunderland branch as the militant branch of What Next. So key achievements. We have 483 people currently on our Facebook page. 2 people joined today. We meet every week, and there's an opportunity for people to meet and talk. Especially important are those freelancers and those smaller organisations, and they're coming. Our key challenge is actually basically to have the energy to just keep going week after week and to raise our profile. Our key action, my time is up, is to keep getting information out to people. There's not enough information going out. We're not working collectively enough because there are too many people out there who just don't know what the bigger agendas are or don't have the opportunities to get involved. We need to grow our voice for Newcastle and Gateshead in the sector, and we need to join up with our other What Next branches. There's Sunderland, there's also Darlington, in and around Darlington, and we need to have a voice. We need to move and shake our region. Thanks.
And finally, coming all the way from Bolton to speak about the Greater Manchester chapter, we've got Roddy Gauld.
The What Next Greater Manchester chapter was at one point the What Next Northwest. It became quite a big region and remit to cover, so we've kind of shrunk in a little bit and meet once a month here at home. But I believe there's work underway to start a Merseyside chapter, and everyone is welcome at our meetings. So our key action. And the image I chose here is the Manchester skyline of the future. And I think that's important because this is a city region which is changing dramatically with devolution. And of course, we're not the only city region to have a directly elected mayor soon. And that is going to be, I think, our single biggest opportunity and action for the foreseeable future. City mayors come with a massive budget, a huge remit, a huge range of partnerships, high-profile cabinet equivalent roles, really. So how do we place culture on their radar? And I think that's the single biggest action we can and should take. But that also leads into what is our biggest challenge here in our chapter. How do we do that? How do we form those unlikely alliances with education, health, transport, the LEP, all these different things that are changing around us? Directly elected mayors will fundamentally change the way that local government in our regions works. How do we put culture in there? And at the same time, how do we make sure that decisions around culture are democratic still? Devolution could easily be centralisation into a different place if we're not careful. And alongside that, how do we keep people engaged and involved? As Patricia said, how do we represent the individual artists, the emerging artists, the next generation, the people that aren't big building organisations that can contribute, and of course, how do we ensure the diversity of our sector and indeed of our movement, looking around the room here today. So these are really big challenges as we try to place ourselves within a much bigger, rapidly changing context. So what's our achievement? I'll be honest, in the last 12 months, it's been a bit of a struggle trying to run What Next Northwest. There's been two of us, and I think Fiona and I would admit it was a lot to do. So we reconstituted and reformed, and I think that's a big achievement, is keeping going. As Patricia said, it's the momentum, bringing people together on a regular basis to share ideas, to share conversation, to share information, to share links. And what we did was, when we were struggling, was we simply asked more people to work with us. And it goes back to something David Land said earlier about, everyone being involved. So my final plea to you all, as my clock ticks down, is please remember it's a movement. It's not passive. It requires all of us and all of you to take action. Please don't leave it to the people sat on stage here. It's a movement. Please get up and move with us. Thank you very much.